Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Hope everybody has a seat. If not, there's in the lobby, you can see everything from the big screen. Welcome to tonight's Kenneth Owler Smith Symposium, Purpose Under Pressure. It's really an honor to host this event for the past 10 years. As many of you know, this evening recognizes the significant contributions of Dr. Smith, who started the PR program here. He is an educator, mentor, and friend to many USC students and faculty, some of whom are here tonight, including Kirk Stewart. Where's Kirk? And behind him, Glenn Osaki. Stand up, you guys. Come on, stand up. They started this a mere 36 years ago when they were just in high school or something. As a labor of love, Kirk volunteered to manage the event this year. Thank you, Kirk. We really appreciate all your hard work. If you have any complaints, he's responsible for all of it. 100% Kirk's fault. But seriously, we have a terrific program in store for you this evening. Before I get started, I want to share two pieces of very big news. 2 weeks ago tonight at the PR Week Awards in New York, we were named the best PR program in the country. For the second time in 3 years. And the entry this year was written entirely by the students. I didn't even read it before it was sent in. And many of them were on hand to accept them. Isn't that a great looking group? All in New York. Unfortunately, my flight was canceled, and I missed the whole thing, which is probably good because every time I'm there, we don't win. I think I'm some kind of a jinx, actually. But and one of our Center for PR students, where's Sophie? Stand up, Sophie. She was named PR Week's Outstanding Student of the Year. Sophie's graduating in the fall, and she wrote a terrific campaign about the World Cup to earn the award. And she's also a Stephen Pollock, Stephen, raise your hand or stand up, scholar for the last 3 years, right? So thank you, Stephen. And Sophie was very excited. Everybody told me she lit up the whole awards program. That was great. So on to tonight's program, I'd like to begin by honoring our presenting sponsor, Golin, and who helped make tonight's program possible. Incidentally, Golin was also named Agency of the Year at the PR Week Awards. Thanks to me not being there, it was a great night for both companies, both groups. Ellen is also, she's the chairman of Golin, and she is also a member of the CPR Board of Advisors here at USC. And she's going to share with you a few words about Golin's almost 70 years relationship with McDonald's and the Ronald McDonald House. I don't think there's another relationship in our business that's lasted that long. So come on up, Ellen.
Thank you, Fred. Let's see, where'd you put the clicker? Here it is. Hi, everybody. I am truly honored to be here to celebrate our partners at McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House. There could be no more worthy recipients of tonight's honor. Truly, no one. McDonald's commitment to making the world better isn't new, and it's not a program. It's part of the company's DNA and has been from the very start. Proudly, we've worked with McDonald's since its very, very early days, and it is a partnership that has defined our agency and how we do business. Some of you will know Golin's origin story. Nearly 70 years ago, Al Golin made a cold call to McDonald's founder Ray Kroc when Ray had a handful of hamburger restaurants in the Chicago area. Al told Ray that public relations, including the vital pillar of community relations and community involvement, would help McDonald's grow and prosper. Lucky for us, Ray believed him. The deal was sealed over a hamburger and a handshake, and the rest is literally our history. There are so many examples of McDonald's commitment to community. Here are Al and Ray, and do note Al's brilliant tie. I hope you love that as much as I do. Al and Ray with one Jerry Lewis, who raised billions for muscular dystrophy with the help of McDonald's through his famous Labor Day telethons beginning in the 1960s. That's a long time ago, but the commitment was deep, deep even then. Al was back at Ray's side when the first Ronald McDonald House was opened in Philadelphia in 1974. And Al was a key voice encouraging its expansion across the country and around the world. And now, some 385 Ronald McDonald Houses and 270 Ronald McDonald family rooms operate in 60 countries all around the globe. They provide housing, comfort, and a place of respite for families who need to be near their hospitalized children. Ronald McDonald House changes lives, and it is one of the most effective and admired nonprofits in the world, and we are honored to support it. While we lost Al a few years ago, his commitment to McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House runs deep throughout Golin. As they say, we have ketchup in our veins, and we have Ronald McDonald House in our heart. Each year, we're proud to field a team of marathoners, 2 are here tonight, to represent and raise funds for Ronald McDonald House at the Chicago Marathon. Some of us support in different ways rather than strapping on the shoes, and we hope that that's okay too. We're so proud of our team and of the cause that they support. So Jon and Joanna, thank you for being here. Thank you for the work that you do for McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House, both legendary organizations and exemplary citizens of the communities everywhere that you do business around the world. So now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce the person who will truly introduce you and lead us in great conversation, and we're excited about it. So I get to say hello to Dean Willow, who has taken this program at USC Annenberg and turned it into something truly exemplary and famous in this industry. It is clearly one of the greatest programs in the world. As a member of the Center's Board of Advisors, I can say that I'm witnessing firsthand her personal touch on the students here and on this program. And I'm really excited that she is here to talk to Jon and Joanna, and it's going to be engaging and fun, and we're all going to learn something really great. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dean Bay, to get the night started. Unbelievably nice. Hi, everyone. Ellen, thank you. I hope this is the beginning of a long and storied history. We got a couple of years on the approach to 70, and I'll buy the fries. In all seriousness, thank you for being tonight's sponsor. Thank you for your partnership and support of this program. Thank you for Fred. And for the gift of Al on this stage, as I shared before. It goes down as one of the great memories of my interviewing career and certainly of my time here at Annenberg. It's also incredible to welcome back our PR, all of the alums and industry partners and board advisors to the 36th Kenneth Owler Smith Symposium. It's an event we look forward to all year. Fred, I have to acknowledge you and your incredible leadership of our Center for PR. I'm really sorry I left my I Heart PR shirt at home. I thought about making Cheryl switch with me, and then somehow that didn't feel quite right. I know you would have, I know, but didn't feel quite right. But you know what the center does for the industry and for countless numbers of students is remarkable, and it's an extraordinary point of pride for us at USC Annenberg, and it is truly one of the things that makes us distinct and has generational impact on so many. So thank you. Kirk, thank you for, yeah, absolutely. I know you thanked Kirk for helping produce tonight. He also had to produce the dean, sorry, but thank you for your help with that as well. In a little bit, Fred is going to share the results of the Center's 11th edition of the Global Communication Report. This year's title is The Quiet Shift. And one of the things that Fred will share with you in greater detail is that the report indicates that in this current environment, purpose is definitely under pressure. The era of overt, purpose-driven corporate activism and communication is fading. The protection of enterprise value is overtaking purpose and public advocacy and reshaping the nature of communication. And we'll have to wait and see, but it may well be an enduring shift. So it's against that backdrop that we award this year's Purpose Award to McDonald's, an organization that is clearly not retreating in its commitment to purpose, as evidenced by its long-standing support of Ronald McDonald House. And I love, Ellen, you sharing that, all those historic artifacts, those photos going back so many years. At Annenberg, we believe purpose is a long-term commitment embedded in operations, guided by leadership and effective communication, and delivers meaningful and measurable impact. McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House have done exactly that. Ronald McDonald's House purpose is beautifully simple: providing care for families with children who are ill and injured. Millions of families have found comfort, stability, and community during some of the most difficult moments of their lives because of the support offered by Ronald McDonald House. So let's take a look at one family's experience.
Yes. It's time to go.
This is a journey no family ever expects to take.
Yes, look.
I know because my family has been where you are now. We all asked ourselves the same question.
Yeah, that's good.
Why us? I wish I could give you the answer.
Are we nearly there yet?
In our hardest moments, we found there was a whole community of support waiting for us, where we were strengthened by other families to keep going.
Okay.
You're very brave. Just remember that.
Okay.
Holding each other for the bad news and the good. So please, let this house remind you how loved you are, how seen you are, and how strong you are. With all our love, from one Ronald McDonald House family who stayed to another.
Wow. So, by the way, thank you also for bringing that beautiful video to all of us. So, McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House have demonstrated that when purpose is authentic, when it's aligned with an organization's core values, when it builds local communities and has meaningful and sustainable human and business impact, it endures. On behalf of the USC Annenberg community, it's my privilege to recognize McDonald's as this year's recipient of the Purpose Award for its unwavering support of Ronald McDonald House. Now I'm going to invite Jon and Joanna up on stage. Joining us from McDonald's is Jon Banner, Executive Vice President, Global Chief Impact Officer, and Joanna Sabato, Chief Marketing Communication Officer, Ronald McDonald House Global. So Jon is leading McDonald's efforts to harness the unmatched scale and reach of McDonald's to effect purposeful change around the world. Not a little job, Jon. But before that, Jon spent 10 years at PepsiCo, and before that, spent the majority of his career at Disney ABC, traveling the world as executive producer on some of the world's most influential news programs, including World News Tonight. Joanna and her team are responsible for the development and execution of Ronald McDonald House global marketing and fundraising strategies, Previously, she held roles at Legends, the Cleveland Browns, Hearst Television, and Cox Media Group. Congratulations to both of you, and thank you for showing us what purpose sustained over time can achieve. This is the moment where I'm giving you the awards, and if I knew where they were, that's this. Oh, I see them. Sorry, I see them. They were hidden behind the book. Sorry. By the way, I did warn this group that this was not my strong suit. You're doing great. Thank you. It's great. Okay, now I'm going to do one of the two of them, please. A conversation now that we have successfully presented their award. Jon, as I mentioned, in your role guiding McDonald's and Ronald McDonald House as a powerful example of purpose that's aligned with core values. How does Ronald McDonald House do that? What are the values, McDonald's values, that they embody?
Yeah, first of all, it's really great to be here. Thank you for this honor. Thank you, Willow, and thank you to the school here. It's great to be in warm weather for a change, and it's nice to be among friends. I think, we have a number of values, but I think we look at Ronald McDonald House as an extension of McDonald's, really. We're known as the first and forever partner of Ronald McDonald House, and I'm sure Joanna will go into the story of how it was created, but it was really the power of the McDonald's system. Several owner-operators in the room here are members of their local and help fund and run their Ronald McDonald House. So it's very embedded in the DNA of McDonald's, whereby we're 95% franchised, and the franchise owners are serving on many of the local chapters, running houses, being spokespeople for houses and contributing to those houses. And the other thing is that if you go to McDonald's and you order food at the kiosk, you can round up for RMHC. And you now, thanks to technology and our teams at our headquarters, you can round up on the app as well. That one sort of benefit is going to mean $83 million this year is given over to Ronald McDonald House. $83 million.
Wow.
And I think in terms of values, clearly family is front and center in everything RMH does. And one of our values is family. And I think it aligns perfectly because there's a real human impact, and you go and visit these houses and you meet the families who are there. There's no other charity that works to solve a real human problem of parents being away from their children when they're getting medical attention and urgent medical attention. And the solution that Ronald McDonald House provides is very human and very family oriented, and trying to keep those families together. And there's great research on how that benefits both the family and the child in terms of health outcomes, which I'm sure Joanna will go into. The other thing I would say is community, and the benefits that another value of McDonald's is community. And that's in part because, in the U.S., which is our biggest market, we have 2,300 franchisees, and no one knows the communities better than our franchisees, and how they support their communities, both as members of the board of RMH chapters around the country and around the world, but also understanding the needs of their specific community. So I think there's 5 values. 2 of them are focused really solely on Ronald McDonald House.
So Joanna, it is a truly remarkable thing for a purpose-driven organization like this to have endured so powerfully for 50 years. What's behind that longevity, and how has it been so enduring, particularly as the world gets noisier and more crowded?
I think that if you look at our origin story, Dr. Audrey Evans helped to co-found the very first Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia, and she had a really profound insight that a sick child is a sick family. And I think that we have really stayed true to that belief over the past 50 years. And I think there is a universal truth in that families, when a family is sick, or when a child is sick, that family is sick. And so I think staying true to that mission over the past 50 years, I think has allowed us to see the success in our growth. I think, and while I maybe have a minute to kind of talk about the community aspect, and just to brag on our partnership and relationship with McDonald's, a really kind of quick, fun story. 50 years ago, Dr. Audrey Evans, who is a world-renowned pediatric oncologist at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, would see her patients sleeping on chairs, living out of vending machines. And she thought, like, there has got to be a better way to take care of these families. And she knew that if you take care of the caregiver, it would improve the outcomes of the child. And so she had a patient who played for the Philadelphia Eagles. His name was Fred Hill. And at the time, Fred Hill and McDonald's were partners with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Dr. Evans said, like, is there any way that with McDonald's and with the Philadelphia Eagles, they can help me raise, she needed $25,000 to go buy this house down the street from the hospital. And so a long story short, the general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles ended up having a conversation with Ray Kroc. They agreed with the local owner-operators to use the proceeds from the Shamrock Shake, a fundraiser that still exists today, and to use money that was raised from that fundraiser to buy the first Ronald McDonald House. And now that that passion has grown into over 60 countries worldwide. And I think because we have stayed true to that belief of helping families, throughout this really, really precious moment in their life, we've been able to just grow exponentially.
You recently, as enduring as you've been, you had a little refresh. Yes. You executed a rebrand.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about why and how and what impact you think it's going to have.
Yeah. So, our research tells us people know who they are, or who we are, but you don't really understand what we do. And there is, I think, a couple of misconceptions about the brand. One, that we just provide housing and accommodations. And for anyone that has visited a Ronald McDonald House or a family room program that is located inside of hospitals, we are so much more than just a roof over a family's providing accommodation. So the brand modernization journey was really to think about, like, how can we refresh our name, our logo, our visual identity, to create more kind of clarity around our brand's purpose. One of the other challenges is that, we say McDonald's has been doing corporate social responsibility like before it was a thing, and helping to start our organization. But a lot of individuals, I'm curious if you all think this, there is a perception that McDonald's solely funds the Ronald McDonald House mission. McDonald's customers, franchisees, the company itself definitely contribute and make about 25% of our revenue. But we also receive revenue from other organizations, corporate organizations, and individuals. And so the refresh was also through an enhanced communications approach, helping to provide just better clarity around who we are, what we do, and that really important role that McDonald's plays in sustaining the mission, but that we still need the generous support from individuals like yourself and other corporations to be able to do the really great work.
And if you will, share with us, you have rather ambitious growth plans that you've established to double the number of families served by 2030. How are you going to do that? And this is a school for communication and journalism. So what's the communication plan that will allow you to do that?
So first of all, no money, no mission. That if for anyone that has worked in the nonprofit sector, that like we need to fundraise, and so our communications goal and objective is like first and foremost, because people know who we are, but they don't understand what we do. My team's number one communications priority is thinking about ways through authentic storytelling, through different partnerships that we can convert that awareness into understanding, because we know once people know what we do, the impact that we have, they are so open and willing to, give their time, talent, and treasure. And so, again, I think that the goals are ambitious. Right now, we're meeting about 30% of families who need access to either a Ronald McDonald House or family room. We want to, again, double that by 2030. The way that we'll do that is we need to be raising more revenue, and we're really going to have to, again, focus our efforts on converting that awareness into understanding so that more folks want to be able to support the mission.
And I think so I sit as a corporate officer of McDonald's, but I also happen to be a trustee on the Ronald McDonald House board. Mm-hmm. The board is an independent board, though. We have myself and our CEO sit on the board with, 15 or 16 other individuals who are outside of McDonald's. So it's an independent board. But I think they've come up with an interesting way to talk about sort of their growth ambitions, which is to serve more families and serve them better. Mm. And it's not only doubling the number of people served. And there was one medical study that came out this year that said 90% of the families who are able to stay close and stay with their children during a medical procedure or treatment are supplied those rooms by Ronald McDonald House. So we're meeting 90% of the need in the U.S., but the need is much more than what we are even providing. So it's not only providing increased number of houses, but how do we provide at least one hot meal a day? How do we provide mental health services? So how do we go beyond just a roof and really think about surround sound to make families get what they need to become, healthier with their children?
And I think with that, we talked earlier, the needs of families when Dr. Evans, started this whole thing 50 years ago look so different today. Families are coming to us. We just had the privilege of visiting the house here in LA, below the poverty line with food insecurity issues. And so we're trying to think, within that house environment, within the family rooms, how are we better understanding what the needs today are of those families, and how we can best show up for them?
And how do you do that with families? Like, what are the listening mechanisms that you have in place to really understand what those needs are? Because it sounds like you're increasingly providing wraparound care.
Yeah, absolutely. So many, including the house here in LA, will have a social worker that is part of the full-time staff. And so that, I think, allows us to really develop a deeper relationship with those families and kind of understand, unique to the communities in which the houses are operating, what are those needs of the families. We've also done some pretty extensive research to better understand the needs of those families. And as Jon mentioned, we know that they are, food insecurity. And so as part of our bold ambitions, not only do we want to double the number of families of serve, it is our goal that every single Ronald McDonald House is at least providing one meal a day to families. Many are providing more than that. And we know that the psychosocial, the mental load that families are feeling during these really vulnerable moments can make or break the family's outcome. And so really asking our chapters to think about what kind of psychosocial support services can be offered either through our staff and or with partnering with other NGOs or nonprofit organizations that do that work.
Yeah, wildly impressive, all that you're doing. Jon, I want to ask you a little bit more about McDonald's and its commitment to purpose, particularly in light of what I mentioned earlier, the data in CPR's study that companies are moving away from purpose-driven activities and more to a protection of enterprise value. That does not appear to be the case for McDonald's. Is that a fair observation? Are you doubling down on purpose, steady state on purpose? How would you describe it, and how are you making that set of decisions?
You know, I'm sitting where I sit. I'm not surprised that some companies are thinking differently about their purpose agenda, given sort of the external environment that we all find ourselves operating in. I think there's a couple of things that that our relationship with RMH and our relationship and the fundamental design of what we like to call the three-legged stool, which is what Ray Kroc sort of instituted, which is the company, the franchisees, and the suppliers all have to work together to have a successful outcome for the company. And I think we have a purpose statement of feeding and fostering communities. And I think that there's no one who can argue that our support of RMH is not a good thing. There's no one who can argue that supporting a community during a time of need, whether that be a natural disaster or trying to get people into the workforce, or supporting our crew who through Archways of Opportunity, if you work for 90 days in our restaurants, you unlock enormous educational opportunities for the crew to get educated, to both advance within the McDonald's system, but to get jobs outside the McDonald's system. We like to say, 1 in 8 Americans have worked at McDonald's, and it's sort of America's best first job is what we like to say. And there's many people who look back fondly, who have soared, Jeff Bezos, one, Paul Ryan, the former Speaker of the House, another. So these people, the former superintendent of the Chicago school system was a 1 in 8er, and still kept in touch with the restaurant that he worked with, still open, and knew people who still worked at the restaurant when he was in high school. So the magic of the McDonald's system and what support we provide to the community and to Ronald McDonald is something that has been ingrained in the business forever. And we're not stepping back because it's too important to the value we provide as a system, and it helps us understand, on a very granular level, we get a better sense of what's going on in the communities because we visit our franchisees, whether here in the U.S. or internationally, to understand what they're doing for their community.
And so your commitment to purpose has not wavered, but have the initiatives changed and evolved over time? I know you have a handful of initiatives, environment, food quality and sourcing, inclusion and empowerment, community connection, and jobs. How do you think about the evolution of the initiatives that, again, are the embodiment of your purpose?
Yeah, I think if you look at some of those, we think, one of our big values and support mechanisms, focus areas is inclusion, which mean we opened our doors to everyone. And I think that's very sort of fundamental to the way we and our franchisees run our restaurants. And I think so they tend to evolve. They haven't been that way forever, but I think at the moment, right, if you think about that a lot of our protein comes from natural resources, and we need those natural resources to be thriving in order to provide hamburgers and chicken and potatoes for French fries. And so we just, with our suppliers, just made a $200 million investment in regenerative agriculture in the U.S. It'll cover 38 states and 4,000 ranchers over the next 5 years to try to help reduce the amount of nitrates that are going into ground, reduce the cost of what they're putting in as inputs into the cattle, and then also hopefully help them from a bottom line manage their resources and make them more productive farmers and ranches. So I think those are very fit for purpose at the moment. They could evolve. I think one other thing is we like to have proof points to our sort of, when we look at sort of our initiatives, what is the contributions. And, I mentioned $83 million that Roundup is providing to, or is expected to provide to RMH this year. But we provide about a $73 billion contribution to U.S. GDP every year.
Yeah.
We support in our restaurants, our franchisees' restaurants, our suppliers, we support about 1 million jobs every year. We pay a lot of money in taxes, and that that's at a national level, and then we have it divided by local and states. And I think what you see is that when people understand the totality of what a brand like ours is doing and contributing, I think they tend to think differently of the company. And so that's why the sort of focus areas are so important to us now, because in some ways, I mean, one of the biggest challenges in corporate America now is prioritization. Like, what do you do first? How do you prioritize your list of to-dos? That's a forcing mechanism for us internally to understand this is what we're going to do. This is not within that, and this is not what we're going to do.
So, I mean, fascinating in hearing the massive numbers as you quantify the impact of the business of McDonald's, right, on the economy, and on communities. How would you quantify the human and business impact of Ronald McDonald House? Do you both do it the same way? Do you do it differently?
We think of, the impact in two different ways, right? And we can talk about the number of families served in terms of the humanity, the very sort of fundamental essence of what RMH stands for. I think there's also a proven sort of two sides of the same coin. The other side is the reputational benefit to McDonald's, that we know that one of the best reputation drivers to improve reputation of McDonald's is by getting closer to RMH. That's through, we talked about the Shamrock Shake and a collaborative effort that's done. We do McHappy Days, which in Canada, in the UK, we just launched one, in Japan, where the business gives a percentage sales on one day to RMH chapters in that country. And so there's a very much a reputational benefit as well as the humanity of providing these services.
And I would say beyond, number of families that were served, I mean, over the past 3 years, tens of millions of families that we're supporting. We're also saving them out-of-pocket expenses, to the tune of, I think in 2025, $678 million that we've literally saved families that would have otherwise, maybe had to abandon their health care, their treatment for their child because they wouldn't have otherwise had access
or
to
gone without food or some other
food.
Necessity to your point.
So yeah, I think that Jon, you hit on that too.
I want to shift, we have a few minutes left. I want to sort of shift gears a little bit and address some of the questions that I suspect our students might have who want to build careers at the intersection of communication and social impact. How do you feel about this as a career? What are the skills that you think are essential drivers of success, right, along that career journey? And I'm doing the thing that journalists are never supposed to do by asking like a bunch of questions at once. So the great journalist sitting in front of me, Jean Guerrero, sorry. Well, go do those two and then I'll pepper you with a couple more.
First of all, this is sort of a second career for me. And I would say it's, I oversee government relations, public policy, sustainability, philanthropy, RMH, our inclusion efforts, and did I say sustainability and global security? And I think the remit that I have sounds kind of lengthy, and how do all those pieces fit together? And it's taken us a couple of years to figure out, actually, when you show up, whether it's to greet a governor who's going to go meet and visit a Ronald McDonald House, or try to help the system with a legislative issue that they have, having all those different pieces under one roof just makes the effort that much more seamless. So I would say it's a great career. Communications and PR is a great career. I've been fortunate enough to be able to work in both. And I think one of the things I think there are two real priorities that I see as fundamental to the roles that certainly that I have. I think I don't want to speak for Joanna, but one is the ability to write well is still hyper important, and I can tell pretty quickly who's a good writer on my team and who's not, and I think those people who can get more and get more opportunities. So I think writing is crucial, even with AI. And yes, AI can get you 80% there, although be careful, might be hallucinating, but it's not going to get you all the way there. And you need that 20% to be really excellent. So I'd say writing, and then the storytelling sort of, and the art of storytelling is crucial no matter what you're doing. If you're a CEO, you need to be able to tell good stories. I think journalism and PR kind of, you get that mix of both good storytelling and writing. And then finally, I think, one of the big things that we talk a lot about in my leadership team is advocacy, and being able to make a compelling case to a legislator or regulator, to a local school board, to a local town council, that you have to be able to figure out how to make a compelling argument. And those 3 or 4 things are critical. But the good news is we have a lot of people come in who are not good at all those, and we can help them and teach them. And it's a great place to work.
I'd say I am so lucky. I get to work for an organization. We're a mission-based organization, and so the work that we are doing is literally helping to save people's lives. So I think the advice that I would maybe, offer to maybe piggyback on what Jon said is I think storytelling is really, really important. And I think right now, we do a lot of research around how we're able to tell our story. And I think, research is only as good as your ability to be able to use it and be able to synthesize it down for different audiences. And so I think I'm always looking for folks, I think, on my communications and marketing team that can, leverage really important proof points and research that we've done in our storytelling efforts. And there's definitely, that's where the art and science, I think, kind of marry together. So I think if that's something that interests you, lean in and explore that.
Jon, you've done this work before. You did it at Pepsi, so you've had the opportunity to lead impact work at 2 of our preeminent consumer brands. Is there a sniff test that you would recommend for an early career person who really wants to determine if the place that they're going to work is serious about?
Yeah. Okay. We'll just. Can you hear me?
It's
back? No. Hello? Hello?
I'm getting, yep, now they're back on.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello? You're back on? Oh, yeah, okay.
We're only a communication school.
Yes. If the mic doesn't work, it's a message. So I think, when I left the news business, I was not sure what I wanted to do. I went and talked to a couple of people down the road at CBS or CNN, and I didn't want to keep doing what I had been doing. And I think at the time, Indra Nooyi was the CEO of PepsiCo, and she was a visionary leader. And I think what I, there are different, you'll hear different people give you different advice about what to do and how to find your niche. I will just say that purpose is really important to me. And how do you find organizations that have a purpose-driven CEO and a mission as part of their company that tries to do some good in some way, shape, or form? And I think that was kind of my sniff test for PepsiCo. It was kind of my sniff test initially at McDonald's. And I think, most of the, there's certain companies that clearly have gone wrong in the last decade. But I think that most companies have realized that in order to attract employees, they need to have a sense of purpose. They need to have some internal values or DNA that makes them unique. And certainly the culture of a McDonald's is very different than a culture of PepsiCo. And so adjusting to that was an interesting learning curve, but I think that's my sort of sniff test.
Mm-hmm. Do you have one?
I've got to maybe build on that. It's interesting, McDonald's is our founding and forever mission partner, but we have lots of other corporations that we work with, Southwest Airlines, Coca-Cola, Lazy Boy Furniture, and many will come to us, especially because good is the new cool, I think over the past couple of years. And so we've had to do our own, I think, sniff testing out, if you will, to make sure that, organizations, we know that, you may want to use the equity of the Ronald McDonald House brand to make your organization look good. And so I think some of the things that we look for is, is there alignment with our values? Is there continuity in the families that we serve, might also represent their customers? And are they not just getting in the business of doing good because it's the thing to do? And what is their legacy in, wanting to do the purpose-driven work with versus just get on the bandwagon because, that's what everyone, I don't know, is wanting to do. So,
well, maybe we can translate making good cool to making good just the right thing to do. So we should all do it. And thank you all for leading the way. And congratulations on the Purpose Award. Delighted to have you. Thanks for spending time with us.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Jon, Joanna, and Willow. One of the amazing things to me about Ronald McDonald House is that it's a program created by a company that is so good that other companies invest in it. I don't know if there's another case where that's the case, where that happens, but thank you. I think we all have a little more ketchup in our veins now after that. Now let's talk in just a few minutes about the Global Communication Report this year. As Willow said, it's called a quiet shift. You can follow along with your hymnal if you'd like. We decided on this topic because there's a dramatic change in the way companies are communicating over the past year, and nobody's really talking about it. We wanted to know why that is the case. So we surveyed 800 people, PR people, in agencies and in-house. We talked to 1,000 U.S. Citizens, and we also interviewed 20 CCOs at Fortune 500 companies. And I want to thank our sponsors who are here tonight. Meltwater, where's Dino? Is it working on? Dino, where are you? Stand up. Thank you. Thank you. And IABC. Cam, are you here? Is Cam here from IABC? No, I guess. Oh, you are. Okay, thank you. It's not working?
No, this one's bad.
Okay. I'm just going to go over a few highlights. One of the first things we wanted to find out is the climate. What's going on in our country right now? And we asked PR people what they thought. And the short answer is it's really hot. It's not only hot in LA, it's hot everywhere. Right now, polarization's at an all-time high, especially in the eyes, as you can see, of PR people. The general public is not quite as sensitized to it, but it still remains maybe that means that we're a little too cautious, but maybe it means we're a little more sensitive than they are. But polarization is a big deal for everybody. And everyone agrees that the number one issue, and there's a lot of them, is immigration. We've been studying polarization for the last 5 years, and immigration is always the hot button that people press when they want ratings, when they want votes, when they want money. They always go to immigration. But if you look further down the list, there's some interesting things in this. If you look at freedom of climate change and LGBTQ rights, those are considered more controversial by PR people than they are by the general public. But you come over to here, the general public is more interested in affordable housing and inflation. These bread and butter issues are more important to them, and it sort of shows you that there may be a little bit of a gap between what we're thinking is in PR and what the people really care about. But the immigration is the big one. So what is the impact on the PR world because of polarization? PR people are pretty much in agreement that that it is bad. It's bad for our mental health. It's bad for our quality of life. It's bad for the rest of the world. And 92% think that it is going to be here for a long, long time. But how does that impact the PR business? Actually, it's ironic because it's just the opposite. 91% believe that it has a positive impact on PR. Now, why would that be? It's bad for everybody else. It's good for public relations. The reason is because in a time when saying anything you say or do, a company says or does, can have immediate negative repercussions, the counsel of a thoughtful, experienced PR person is priceless. So in times of crisis like this, or if you call this a crisis, polarization, PR people are very valuable and very important in the mix. So I think that's a good thing. But the question is, will that last? We talked about the choice. There's always a choice. When the stakes are this high, a skilled communicator employs sort of a reputational calculus to figure out the risks and rewards of engaging on an issue or restraining from engaging. It's sort of like to use Shakespeare, it's like the PR version of to be or not to be. And that's the big question. And polarization has made that calculus a lot more complicated than it used to be. For the past 4 years, we've asked PR people whether they felt companies should engage with issues that aren't core to their basic business. You can see in 2023, almost everybody thought that was a good idea. A little bit less in 2024, but look at how it's dropped in the last 2 years. The question you have to ask yourself is this the anomaly that people thought purpose was so important? Or is this the anomaly? Which way is the pendulum going to swing? And I'm not sure that it's going to swing back the other way. That raises the question that a lot of PR people face every single day that work inside corporations. Is a good defense the best offense? Or is the good offense the best defense? And you can see there's sort of mixed views on this. And I think it's probably situational. It depends on the company. It depends on what the issue is. But that's the decision you have to make. Are you going to say something about it, or are you going to be quiet? Are you going to shut up, or are you going to talk? And there's 16%, or sort of people like me, who really didn't understand sports well enough to answer this question. But one thing is perfectly clear. The choice right now is defense. Over the past few years, there has been a quiet shift from broad purpose-driven communications, as Willow was mentioning, to a more selective approach to corporate speech. And these are amazing charts. We'll show these in a second. This is from a company called Cometrics, a partner of ours, and they measure executives' messaging on LinkedIn and other social media. And this shows, this is the 6 months before and after the last election, 2024 election. And you can see that these purpose-oriented topics, messages on LinkedIn and others have dropped considerably. Environmental topics almost as much, and more business-related topics, especially AI, have increased enormously. So this is a shift just over 6 months before and after the election. Huge change. We're experiencing that now. Go to the next slide. You can see the same thing exists. Meltwater provided this analysis for us. The same thing happens with media. The stories in major media about purpose-oriented things and environmental things drop precipitously. And AI, is anybody tired about hearing about AI yet? It's everywhere. Everybody's talking about AI. Now, the reason DE&I is 32% up isn't because people were writing about DE&I. They were writing about it, but they're writing about the fact that it was going away, that people were shying away from DE&I. So that's the only reason there are more stories about that. So that's a huge shift for our business. So the final question, I think, I'm going to put this very poetically. Are we the trumpet who leads us forward to do great deeds? Or are we the shield who defends us against those who attack us? And sometimes the answer is both. But I think if we're on the defense, we have to ask ourselves long term, what does that mean for our profession? So we asked the people in PR what they thought PR's role was right now and over the next 5 years. And as you can see, protection is the top rated thing, way more than building the business, which is down here. And it's even more so, if you can see, it's in agency and corporate. Agency is even more in the protection game than corporate. If we're focusing on protection, if we're playing defense, are we going to have the same stature within an organization as if we're playing offense? Another omen for the future is that we ask corporate PR people whether in the next 5 years they were planning to restructure. And 2/3 of them said the answer to that was yes. And which is evidence of the dynamic change taking place in our industry and our ability to adapt to it. And that change is going to be more about crisis management. It's going to be more about government relations. In terms of audiences, the government has become the most important audience for communicators, much more so than employees and consumers. And public affairs and government relations and influencers too are going to become more and more important. So the skills that you're going to need to be successful in this world are a little different than the ones that they have been in the past. Part of the reason that we are so adaptable is because we're so damn positive. PR people are naturally, I think, feel positive about their profession, and we can see the 2/3 feel really good about the future, and I think that's an important thing. Despite all the things we're experiencing with AI and hybrid and polarization, we're still pretty positive about the future of our business. And it was reminding me, when I saw a movie this week, I took my students to a movie at the cinema school. It's called the AI Doc. I highly recommend it. It's funny, it's powerful, and it's a documentary about AI. And they invented a word in that movie that I think describes what public relations people are like. It's apocalypticism. And that means, like, we predict the worst possible scenarios, and then we're sure it's all going to turn out okay. So I am definitely an apocalyptimist myself. And I want to see what our panelists, if they feel like they are too. So would you guys please come up to the stage? Try to say that 3 times. Apocalyptimist. I'm doing it. Want to try it? Ron can say it. Ron wrote it out on my cards in sign language, phonetically. Willow mentioned Jean Guerrero. Jean, thank you. Jean is going to moderate this discussion. She's a visiting professor of journalism at USC. She's an Emmy Award-winning investigative journalist and the author. Where's her book? Oh, I left it down there. Author of a book about Stephen Miller called Hate Monger. Thank you, Jean. She is currently a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times and a former opinion columnist at the LA Times. She started her career at Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones Newswires. Jean is joined by let's start with Dave. Dave Tovar. Dave's currently the executive director of corporate communications at Ford Motor Company, but he has worked for almost all of the biggest brands in America: Walmart, Sprint, McDonald's, Kraft Foods, and he is an expert at corporate communications and all those jobs. Thanks, Dave, for coming out. Next to him is Janet Clayton. Janet Clayton won 2 Pulitzer Prizes as a former editor of the Los Angeles Times. She is also the former chief communications officer at Edison, one of the nation's largest utilities, where she served on the company's 8-member executive management team. She's currently a senior strategist at Vectus DC, and she's a member of the board of advisors along with Dave and Bill. Bill Amata is a longtime friend of mine. He's the founder and chairman and chief connectivity officer of the IW Group, an advertising, marketing, and communications agency focusing on the multicultural markets. And Bill, how many years have you worked for McDonald's?
32.
32 years, almost half of what Golin has. And Bill's represented some other top global brands, including, Coca-Cola. McDonald's doesn't serve Pepsi, do they? Was that hard to do? American Airlines, Warner Brothers, and also Walmart. So take it away, Gene. Thank you.
Great to be here with all of you. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. It's great to be here with such a great panel. So I've been covering immigration my whole career, which is one of the most controversial issues we saw. So I'm biased. I believe we really need a counter narrative on immigration and so many of the social issues that we're seeing an abandonment on. As Fred was talking about, the data shows that support for companies engaging in social issues has dropped from 89% in 2023 to about 55% today. And as Willow, Dean Bay was saying, the era of overt, purpose-driven corporate activism is, or at least it seems to be, fading. So I wanted to ask all of you, or any of you, just to start, what happened to corporate courage?
You want me to go? Sure. Happy to start. Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Excited to be back on campus. It's been a little bit. I've been involved with the school here for, 8 or 9 years now. And I love being on campus and being with all the students and the environment that you get when you're on campus like this and you get to talk about these types of things. So thank you. Look, Fred likes to invite me to these things because I tend to be a little controversial. But I think that's kind of what the dialogue should be about. And I think that's part of the things we're missing a bit in this country. And so I'm going to say one thing to start and get this kicked off. Some of the people who filled out these surveys that Fred and team interviewed are the very people who created the push for companies to take more positions on purpose. And what happened was, it became a big fad. People started moving in that direction. And unfortunately, companies took positions on things that were outside of what society deemed they were allowed to take a position on. And so I'll use 3 examples. So as Fred said, I've worked for a few companies in my career. And 3 of them were most recently listed as 3 of the most iconic companies by Time Magazine. There was a recent study that came out. They surveyed 11,000 people, and Ford was the number 1 most iconic company on the list, which is great because that's who I work for now. Walmart was number 4, and McDonald's was number 6. And what is interesting about those 3 companies is their purpose is very clear, and they don't stray from it. And when you know who you are and you know where you should play and where you should not play, it helps give you that guidepost. But in working at those companies, from the second you walk in the doors, you feel Sam Walton at Walmart and his vision for that company and how they democratized low prices. And it's part of their DNA. It's who they are. When you walk into the headquarters at McDonald's or in any of the restaurants, you know what Ray Kroc and that team was starting, and that still exists today as a company. And same thing with Ford. Henry Ford started Ford Motor Company in 1903. 123 years later, we're still doing the things that he wanted us to do, which is manufacture automobiles, mostly here in the United States, create jobs, create opportunities for communities, and help people move about and explore the world through automobiles. And so we know who we are, and we know where we have a right to play, and we know where we don't have a right to play. And I think what happened was companies were trying to get in on that, and they made some mistakes along the way. I think that's hurt them. And so when you're seeing now some of the people saying, well, now it's better to be silent because they feel burned by what happened over those last few years. And I think the companies who know who they are can stay that course and can ride through any turbulence that they might experience.
So you're saying it came across as maybe inauthentic to the public, that these corporations getting in on a lot of
to some companies, yeah.
Interesting. Do you guys have anything to add on that?
Yes. Corporate courage. Honestly, how much corporate courage existed in the civil rights movement? Was any major corporation saying we support Black people having equal rights? They weren't. And the reality is, that the only time that corporations came forward, to Dave's point, between 2020 and 2024, that was after George Floyd was murdered. Tens of thousands of people hit the street. And frankly, a lot of companies jumped on a bandwagon that they thought, okay, well, we need to be cool. We need to make sure that we let people know we don't agree with people getting murdered. Okay, that's a pretty safe position to take, given how many tens of thousands of young people and people of all types and colors took to the street, and they responded to that. But the problem with the bandwagon is you better believe in the bandwagon. And as what we saw at the beginning of 25, when the current occupant of the White House made DEI illegal, well, then what would we really expect corporations to do? Except to go safe. And there are still things that corporations obviously support. Pets are safe. Disease of children is safe. But the reality is that there's not a lot of things that corporations do now in an overt way because they're in business. And I do understand that.
Bill, I want to just follow up on that question, specifically when it comes to PR, which is increasingly operating as a shield and to protect corporate reputation rather than as a so-called trumpet to build and to advance reputation. So what we're seeing in the report is that risk aversion is overtaking this bold storytelling. And what I wanted to ask you, Bill, is if you see that kind of strategic silence as a form of complicity, and what message that approach is sending to students and to young generations who are pursuing this as a field.
Well, first of all, this conversation about purpose is really interesting because, we've had to deal with purpose under fire for a long, long time. I mean, just imagine being a person of color in the United States, being involved in PR. We're code switching every single time in order to fit in order to be relevant, in order to convince companies and organizations that we mean something, including the immigrants that you were talking about earlier. What is really important, I think, for this conversation is that exactly what Dave said. Some of the companies, they stay true to who they are. And so when Jon was up here, he was talking about, this three-legged stool thing. I just want you to know that this three-legged stool means something because we're part of that three-legged stool when we work with McDonald's. McDonald's has their corporate team. They have their owner-operators, the franchisees, and then they have the suppliers like the PR agencies. And those PR agencies, along with the people that are in the franchise business and the corporations, when we get together, that's when we know how to adjust and how to, be a part of the community. We have our fingers and are on the pulse of what's happening in those communities. So I think as students, it's very important for you to learn from that, is to know how to be agile, know how to follow other people and learn from other people and build those practices. So I think for when we talk about this situation, it's something that I have to live with every day. And I think that for the young people out there, especially people of color, we have to also focus on how we adjust and adapt as we go along. So,
and on that note of adjusting and adapting, I wanted to ask all of you if you could share a little bit about what purpose under pressure looks like for you in this moment, not as a branding exercise, but in practice. If there's kind of a moment or an experience that you can share with us where you really felt that sort of purpose under pressure.
Well, I currently work with Vectis DC. It's a small public relations and public affairs company. And we got a major international organization that came to us for help because they do believe in diversity, inclusion, and they're not going to change. It is core to what they do. So their concern was, how do we stay off the radar in this moment? Because we're not going to run away from who we are, but we are not interested in attracting attention or becoming a 4 a.m. tweet. And so they hired us to help them navigate. And so what we did is we sat down with them. We sort of talked about, okay, what's really important to you? They had been very consistent in their purpose. And so we wanted to keep them there. So one of the things that we did was take a look at their website, take a look at their materials, and gave them some practical suggestions like, okay, so your organization, and I'm not naming the organization because we have a non-disclosure agreement with them, but the pictures on the website were really talking about the people who they've helped through their programs. You saw a lot of Black people, a lot of Latinos, a lot of Asians, a lot of women. We said, you help white men too, right? He said, yes, of course. And we help people in the South, and we help people in the East, and we help people all over the country and in other countries. He said, so show them. Let's see the pictures of all those people you're helping, because you're actually helping everyone.
Right.
But if I looked at that and I knew nothing about you, I would think that you're focused only on the people you're picturing. And so it was a small thing, but again, tell your story, tell your full story. And so that's how I think Vectis was able to help them.
Fascinating. Yeah. So that's kind of a way of approaching the polarization that we're seeing by trying to branch out in terms of the inclusivity that we're showing.
Opening the aperture.
But I feel like we talk a lot about storytelling. Storytelling is important, but if we're going to be good about telling these stories, we have to find the intersections that we have with everyone's story. So every single person in this room, like each of us, have a story that's unique to us. We have lived experiences that are unique to us. But the best way to kind of deal with purpose and to address it is to share those stories and find the intersections that we have with one another. So one thing that we did early, and I think this is what PR people do well, is that we think about the challenges in the future and we plan for them. We look at what the trends are and we analyze them. So one of the things that Walmart and McDonald's just did is, after we talked about this 10 years ago, they created a Chamber of Commerce that focuses on, specific issues, specifically for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. But they wanted to make sure that this organization would cover all points of view. So it has Republicans and Democrats and people that are independents. This was planned 10, 12 years ago, based on the stories that they heard, based on the trends, based on what could happen as things switch back and forth. And so keeping in line with the purpose that these companies had, they worked with the agency to pull these things together so that we could plan ahead for these contingencies. But now we want to not only tell the stories of all the people that are impacted by what's happening in the world today, we want to make sure that those stories are amplified from storytelling to doing to living.
Right. And Dave, in the same vein, a limited number of the respondents actually placed a significant responsibility on large public companies for reducing polarization compared to political parties, for example, or elected officials. But you clearly still think I think you still think there's a role for companies to play. And so I'm wondering how you're adapting to this moment, how an example maybe that you can give us of how you've continued to try to push for a sense of purpose while acknowledging the context that we're in.
Sure, happy to take that one. Look, I think Ford is a $200 billion company. I don't think we have the right to not, have a point of view on certain things. The impact that we have on the world, the people we employ, the people who are in our supply chain, the people who drive our automobiles. They expect us to have a responsibility on certain things like that. And so that's the way we look at it. But I'll go back to what I said, in the very beginning. It's knowing who you are and knowing, where your lane is and what you can talk about. And so, look, in the last year, there's been a lot of impacts on Ford through things like tariffs, through things like EPA emissions reforms that have all been coming out of the White House. Some of those things have been harmful to our business. Other things give us a lot more flexibility on our business. But for example, when the Trump administration removed a lot of restrictions on EPA emissions for automobiles, you would think the auto industry would be saying like, okay, great, no regulations, like that's really good for us. We were the ones who came out and said, look, there should be a standard, but that standard should be something that the industry can work with, that NGOs can support, that we can work together, that can increase over time, but that it can be managed so that the business can have predictability and stability as it tries to run its operations. Because for Ford, the automobiles that we build and the new cars that we're designing right now won't be available for 5 to 7 years from now. So to try to have a 5 to 7 year product cycle when you have administrations changing every 4 years, sometimes every houses changing every 2 years, it becomes really hard to operate a business like that. So we came out and said, no, we want some form of regulations, and let's work together to try to figure out what that is. So that was a point that others in the industry didn't take, but we saw that as something where we could take a leadership role and advocate for that.
Great. Bill, I wanted to ask about, there's a lot of concern about polarization as a crisis, this perception of it as a crisis. But as Fred was talking about earlier, it also presents an opportunity potentially for people in PR. And so I wanted to ask you, there is a lot of concern among agency professionals when it comes to polarization, more so than with in-house teams and more so than with the general public. So, are agencies out of touch with the public, or are they are they responding to clients and consumers' actual needs and expectations?
I actually think, to answer your question, there's been a number of surveys. So USC did a survey earlier with Zeno that talks about who feels like they're the most informed public. And if you look at the generations, the millennials, the Gen Zers, the boomers, and the Gen Xers all say that they are the most informed. Our recent survey on civility that we did, 3,000 people across the US, who is the most civil? Millennials said that they're the most civil. Gen Z said they're the most civil. Boomers said they're the most civil. Gen Xers said they're the most civil. But when they think about the public, they believe that the public is not as civil as they are. So I actually think that, of course, some of the study is important. We know that immigration is a hotbed issue. We know that it's going to create issues each and every year. But if you were to take that survey 6 months from now, those things are going to shift and change. And one thing that I think PR people do well is that they keep an eye on those shifts. Because what is popular today, 6 months from now, it's going to be a completely different issue. And so one thing I like about PR people, both the internal people and the people that are external, is that we're paying attention to what's happening. We're reading the news. We're paying attention to trends. We're talking to our owner-operators. We're talking to the other suppliers. We're talking to the people that are customers. And so we have an idea. So I think that that's something that makes us in a better position to know, because I actually don't think the public knows sometimes.
That makes sense. Do you guys have anything to add on the issue of polarization? And is there a version of polarization that perhaps is actually healthy for public discourse? And if so, how should companies and PR professionals be communicating with it rather than around it?
Well, as I grew up in journalism, so the word polarization to me is just kind of inherently negative, the word itself. But I would say that one of the things that I think we should get back to is something that Dave said, which is when I was running communications at Edison, one of the things that first things I wanted to do is to make sure that the company's purpose was aligned with the things that we were supporting. We were giving away $22 million a year, and some of that was going through different officers in the company to give to their sort of favorite charities. And it's like, that's nuts. Reputationally, that's nuts. And so when a company knows that what it stands for, we realigned and went from just sort of general giving to energy and environmental focus because it was a utility company, and education. So I think if we don't have to, whatever's happening in the country right now, if companies and people and individuals know what they believe in and know what they stand for, and try to make choices that make sense, then I think people respect that. And I think companies only get in trouble when they, as Dave said, get away from who they really are, try to become something that is the vogue of the moment, and it's not authentic, and people sense that.
I'll just build on that because I've been in that situation before, and you see money going out the door at a lot of big corporations to charitable organizations that are perfectly wonderful organizations that do a lot of great for the communities. However, if it doesn't fit with the purpose of the company, then that's when you can get into trouble. And so what I always advise, especially when I'm talking to students, is have a really clear strategy, what your purpose is, what you're going to do, how you're going to give back to society through your products and services first and foremost, and then other things that you can do beyond that, because it also gives you the ability to then say no to things. And Jon mentioned it earlier about prioritization. Like you should be in meetings debating whether things are truly a priority for the company and really scrutinize over those things, because do fewer things, but do them really well, and do the things that are so close to who you are as an organization. And that's going to keep you grounded and keep you on the right path to weather the things that are going to come at any organization that you're working for.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think part of the backlash to DEI that we've seen has been this conflating of it with elites, with corporate elites, in the sense that it doesn't actually represent the values of working class Americans. But it's because I think so many companies jumped on the bandwagon on issues that they didn't necessarily, they didn't form a core part of who these companies were and what their missions actually were. So it's interesting to hear you say that.
Can I give one other example? Because I think this is always a fascinating one to me. There's two brands out there that are among the two most polarizing brands. One is Chick-fil-A, and the other on the other side is Patagonia. And while they may be polarizing and people may criticize them for certain positions that they take on the left or the right, they're also every year amongst some of the most respected companies out there and trusted companies, because they are who they are and they stand by that. And so you can disagree with that if you want to, and we should all disagree with certain things. I'm a New Yorker, native New Yorker, and moved to Bentonville, Arkansas for my career. And that was a very strange occurrence for me. And I had a lot of great dialogue with people who are completely different from me in terms of the things they believe and the way they were raised and everything. I love them, and they are dear, dear friends of mine. I just disagree with a lot of the things that they agree with, but we can respect each other because they're clear and consistent with who they are, and so am I. And it's those two brands. I love that example because you can really see how you can take positions that people may not be popular, but just be consistent about it.
Yeah. So polarization. It seems like it. I mean, well, actually, before I editorialize, I want to ask you, do you think that polarization is here to stay with us? And if it is, what advice would you give to students so that they can align their skills to adapt and be successful in this new environment?
Yes. It's here to stay unless social media goes away, which I don't see that happening anytime soon. Because if you think about this, it's another example I like to use. Taking positions that are extreme or trying to stand out in the crowd is not a new phenomenon. If you were a freshman congressperson 25, 30 years ago, you got relegated to a subcommittee of a subcommittee and something, and you had no platform. And you try to work your way up, and maybe you got a better committee assignment a couple of years later, and then you got into a leadership position. Then the media would start seeking you out for interviews. Then you might be able to then advance and take these positions. Now, anybody who gets elected, in fact, even if you're not elected, my daughter, who's a teenager, can go on TikTok tonight and take a position on something, and that could go viral tomorrow, and she could have 2 million followers overnight. So social media has created the opportunity for people to get a huge platform almost instantaneously. And because of that, there's no reason to be conservative with the way you talk about things or take positions. I don't mean conservative on the left or right. I just mean to play it safe, to move towards the middle. There's no incentive to do that. I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Well, I hope that's wrong, Dave. And maybe, remember that politicians are driven by, and corporations, and all of us who have to make public policy, they're driven by where are the people? And if we have different results in elections, if in Texas a moderate person gets elected, then maybe people are weary of all of the fighting and the name calling. And if that happens, and more moderate people are put into office, more reasonable people who can agree to disagree calmly, maybe then the tone will change, because at the end of the day, we respond to what's out there. We politicians don't really, well, maybe I'll change that. But PR people don't create policies. We respond to policies, and we try to promote, of course, the business that we're in. But I'm hoping that we'll get maybe we'll get tired of where we are right now, and maybe the dialogue will begin to change. That's my hope.
Janet and I were talking about this during the reception earlier, but the American electorate is remarkably good at keeping checks and balances in this country. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Sometimes we go through some things that might be a bit painful. But you look at the country's history, and it's been pretty remarkable to see all the people in this room, all the people in meetings like this tonight and every night out there. We have that power, and that's I think the good news is if you've just seen over the years, it should move in some direction one way or the other. Now, sometimes it swings too far one way, sometimes it swings too far the other way. So that's what I think we have to look out for. But that's what I'm hopeful for.
I believe very strongly that if it's really going to be polarization here to stay, then there's no sense in thinking about neutrality, because that'll be a myth. Mm-hmm. However, I believe very strongly in what the polls say, that Americans and the world are pretty resilient and hopeful. And as long as there's hope, and I see this from Gen Z and younger millennials, they're the most hopeful generation, and they're seeing the mess that boomers and Gen Xers created. So because of that, and because we live in a more multicultural environment, I think that hope is going to be brought together by the next generation that's in the room. So I'm very optimistic, like a lot of PR people are. But I think that exactly what Janet said, people are going to get tired of it. And we're already seeing the impact that it's having on the mental health of every single generation, but specifically the mental health of younger millennials and Gen Zers. And so at some point, somebody's going to say enough. We're going to change this. And so I think that this is going to happen.
I hope so. I'm also very hopeful. I also, as a journalist, for a long time, just knee-jerk had this feeling like polarization is bad, and it feels really bad. But I was reading Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail, where he talks about this constructive tension, this constructive conflict being necessary before you have real progress. And so he kind of embraced a type of polarization. And I wonder and I hope that we're moving through that as a society together in this moment, and that the people in this room can be a part of helping, whether it's loudly or quietly. And so before we might have time for a super brief Q&A, but really quickly, I wanted to ask all of you if you could synthesize in a very short way just how this situation that we are living has changed the way that organizations communicate internally and externally. If you could just kind of synthesize for us what the change has been from your perspective.
Well, I would just say that one of the things I hope we've learned is that internal and external communication have to match up. You cannot say as a company we're all for X, and then internally not make that real for your employees, because the employees will not take it anymore. They'll go public. They'll tweet about it. You've got to figure out what do you stand for, and then you have to be consistent with both external and internal.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah, I think, the companies I've worked for, it's really become clear to me that one of the biggest roles we play is around stakeholder management. Because for a company like Ford, McDonald's is no different, Walmart, others, you have many stakeholders. You have, your customers, you have your employees, you have investors, we have dealers, you have your suppliers. And, oftentimes decisions you make, the chances that you're going to get it right, 5 for 5 among all those audiences, that they're all going to be supportive, they're all going to love that decision, it's rare. And so inevitably you have to, make some decisions, and those are very difficult decisions to make. But I think what you're going to hear consistently from all of us is, be thoughtful about those decisions, truly listen to those stakeholders, hear what is on their mind and, what's bothering them, and try to come up with, try to constructively engage with them in a way that's going to try to come up with solutions that are workable for everybody. Be open-minded about, what solutions you might not have thought about had you just rushed to, a decision immediately. And if you do that, even for people who may disagree with the decision you've made, hopefully they will respect the process you went through. They'll felt like they were listened to, they were heard, and they'll want to continue to partner with you and believe in you. And if you have enough of that equity built up because you were consistent, because they know you go through this process, then that's going to help any company deal with some bumps along the way, which are inevitably going to happen. And they'll still want to work with you or buy your products or come join the company or supply for you. So yeah.
We talk a lot about protection, and there is a move toward protection, right? We want to protect what we have. We want to protect companies. But I actually see it a little bit differently. I actually think we want to keep people safe. We want to keep our companies safe. We want to keep our organizations safe. We want to keep our stakeholders and employees safe. So that provides an opportunity to create these safe environments. And it starts with the top of all of our organizations, is to create this opportunity where people can be heard. Exactly what Dave said when we were looking at some of the research. People sometimes just want to be heard. We don't need to weigh in and say we disagree. And just hear me out and let me tell you what I'm thinking and feeling. And I think when we do that and create those safe spaces, we're going to actually kind of close that gap, with what we're talking about now. But I also wanted to say that as we create, it's always good to have some tension, because you look at the history of our country and the history of the world, there's always some conflict and tension. If we do not have some of this tension in our companies and our organizations in our country, we're not going to innovate. We're not going to be able to hear an idea. And we've got to be able to create those spaces so that we can hear these great ideas, even if we disagree. And that's going to help us move forward on a lot of fronts.
So not retreating from conflict altogether.
We should not retreat from conflicts, but we should celebrate when we are wrong. We should celebrate when we're learning something. Even if we don't agree, we're hearing a different point of view. That's okay, because there might be some value in that idea, and we move on that idea and make it better. Or we talk to people about these things. And so if we get to a point where we actually celebrate our differences that make us unique and our own stories, then we're going to be in a better position to deal with some of the challenges we have.
I like that. Do we have time for a question? I think no. Okay. Well,
we don't.
I will.
Okay. Does anybody have we have time
a very
for a
quick question.
Anyone?
No. Okay. Well, I will just add, just to close, unless someone wants to chime in. I mean, it's a tough time for so many people in so many different fields. But I think the position that you all are in it's a particularly tough position to be in. And so I just wondered if you might share with the audience what kind of gets you out of bed in the mornings to make you feel like the way that you communicate with the world is something that actually matters and can make a difference.
I don't want this to sound arrogant, but I don't feel like we're in tough positions. I feel like we're in great positions. Like, I feel very fortunate to have worked for the companies I've worked for and have learned the things that I've learned from some amazing leaders that I've got to interact with, and helping organizations like the one I work for now and others I've supported in the past. Like, that's great stuff, and it's really fascinating and it's really challenging. But if you wake up and you're, there was one of the questions I thought said, like, this isn't for the faint of heart. And it's like, well, then you shouldn't be in this field. And, because I get up every day and run to work. Not really. I don't run. I'm more of a couch guy myself, but it's fun and it's exciting and it's challenging and it's all those things that you get to work with some incredible leaders and business people. And, I feel like I've gotten my MBA. I didn't go to business school, but I went to art school and ended up in this field. And, I feel like I get my MBA every time I join a new organization or I learn about a new industry. And, that's, I think, part of the beauty of PR and communications is, my expertise, my core competency is communications. It's not automotive. It's not retail. I told them, I said, like, if you want a car guy, like, you don't want me under your hood. Like, I don't know if that car will drive again. But they said, look, we got car people for days at Ford. We got that covered. What we don't have are people who can help, us navigate through these incredibly uncertain, world that we're living in right now. So that's what gets me excited.
Cool. Briefly, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be able to help people tell a story. One of our clients is Homeboy Industries. They do great work, right? They save people's lives. People who go to prison and have had a horrible upbringing or background, or just went to jail, took the wrong turn, and then, they come out and they have new skills. They bake. They do things. They turn their lives around, and to be able to tell that story is a wonderful thing. And I do think that, for all of the angst, this is a wonderful business to be in.
Love what I do every single day. I wake up early, and part of it is because I love stories, but I also want to find the intersectionality where the connections that every person has with those stories and pull those stories in and then actually convert it to doing something about it. So that's what keeps me going.
I think you're all apocalyptimists.
Yes, we all are. Well, thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you, panel. That was great. Thank you, McDonald's, for being here. Thanks to all of our sponsors, Golin, Meltwater, and IABC. Thanks to Kirk. Any complaints? No. Thanks to Kirk and Ron and all the students that helped put this together. We really appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for coming. Really appreciate it.